Think about how can you help a woman if you have a woman in your organization, or it doesn't have to be a woman, but anyone basically you want to help, especially women. How can you support her by potentially giving her a mentor? It can be, someone within the organization or someone external. That, by the way, also helped me when I started leading a team. As I started managing a team, I had so much insecurity that I really needed someone to help me and to gain a confidence in my abilities. So, mentorship is one way of doing that.
Welcome to another episode of the Leading to Fulfillment podcast, where everything we talk about is meant to encourage people first leaders, empower individuals, and to help your organizations become places people love to work. I'm your host, James Laws, and I have an interesting show in store for you. My guest for this episode is Limor Bergman Gross. Limor has been in the tech industry for more than 20 years, where she has led teams at companies like DigitalOcean, Oracle, VMware, and Sun Microsystems. Her passion is helping women succeed in the tech industry. To do this, she's focused on mentoring engineering managers for the past 4 years. In my conversation with Limor, we discuss how tech organizations can make their workplaces safer and more fulfilling for women, the challenges of becoming and being a woman in leadership, the biases against women that leaders should watch out for, and the challenges in remote team communication and connectedness, and how to handle difficult performance conversations. But first, I want to invite you to subscribe to the Leading to Fulfillment podcast in your favorite podcast tool. We're on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much everywhere you can find podcasts. We should be there. And if we're not, please let me know, because I would like to correct that. And I would love to have your review. So if you get a chance, let us know what you think about the show. Now, let's jump into my conversation with Limor Bergman Gross. Limor, thank you so much for joining me today on the Leading to Fulfillment podcast.
Absolutely. It's a great pleasure being here today.
I'm really excited to have this conversation. I've been reading some of your stuff on LinkedIn. You've worked in some pretty big companies in engineering and lead and director roles. I want to ask you, since the topic of the podcast is leading to fulfillment, I wanted to ask you, what did you find the most fulfilling about those roles that you had in the corporate world? And then why did you ultimately make the decision to transition out and become a full-time coach and teacher?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question, James. So I think if I look back at my career, I started as an individual contributor, as an engineer, as a software engineer. And while I loved what I did, I realized after a few years of doing that I really enjoy making an impact. It started with working with clients, working with customers, and also working with a small team. And then when I started leading teams and after that organizations, I really enjoyed the impact that I make on people's lives, on their professional growth, on their career. And also, more to that, the impact I have on the direction the company was going, on the bottom line for the company, especially as I moved to a smaller company to DigitalOcean. It's not so small, but it was smaller when I started. So the impact was far greater. And kind of leading to why I left, I found my purpose at some point. It took a while, it wasn't immediate. But as I was working in DigitalOcean, and even before that, I always worked primarily with men, white men, to be precise. Nothing bad about that. But as a woman in a very male dominant field, I felt that I want to see more women. And as I grew to a director, I said, I want to impact, I want to help more women get into tech, stay there, and flourish. And that was, I think, the most fulfilling part of my job in DigitalOcean, because I was able to hire women and really make an impact I was part of the diversity and inclusion committee in DigitalOcean. I partnered with Part2Fly, which is a company I work with today. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the impact I can make on women's life. And that's what led me to a decision to really focus on that.
I love the focus on purpose, and in our careers, as we're looking for what we want to do, and we're looking for what we ultimately want to do, somewhere in there we find the meaning, right? The thing that says, I believe this matters, and I believe I can have an impact on it. And a lot of times, we you hear about so many people say, do what you love, do what you love, do what you love. And you also hear a lot of people say, what you love follows what matters and where you have impact. So when you find something that matters to you, and you find something that you can have an impact on, the love of that thing will actually form out of an abundance of those things. And you talk about helping women in their careers. I want to kind of flip it on the other side. As a business owner, as a leader, as somebody who is hiring a team of people, and as a white man, right? Like in this industry, what kind of advice would you give to leaders, especially those in tech, who are looking to make their workplaces safer, more inviting, and more fulfilling for women? Like, I know your focus is how to help women with their careers, but how can businesses start to be a part of that and join you in that process?
Absolutely. So, first of all, in order to do that, I created a mentorship program because mentorship has been part of my life for over 5 years. I'm mentoring in multiple platforms, some paid and some free. And I've seen the impact I was able to make on people I mentor. Usually, I mentor people in engineering from junior to, execs. And usually they tell me, wow, just working with you, open up possibilities for me. It's not that I do that. I just help them, figure out what are the possibilities that they have in their careers. So I think one of the great tools that employers can do and business owners can do is think about how can you help a woman if you have a woman in your organization, or it doesn't have to be a woman, but anyone basically you want to help, especially women. How can you support her by potentially giving her a mentor? It can be, someone within the organization or someone external. That, by the way, also helped me when I started leading a team. As I started managing a team, I had so much insecurity that I really needed someone to help me and to gain a confidence in my abilities. So, mentorship is one way of doing that.
Okay.
Obviously, you also have to think about how you talk and how you operate and be a little bit sensitive of different personalities. By the way, it's not just related to women. A lot of times we do things unintentionally and we don't think about how others may perceive them. I can give an example like when I was a software engineer, I used to work with worldwide teams of engineers, most of them were men. And I specifically remember there was a team in Eastern Europe, in Russia, and we're giving code reviews one to another. And one of them, like, he used to write very kind of direct code reviews. To me, it translated to "you're stupid." Obviously, it was not what he meant, but it's just think about what you say, how you operate, and how can you be sensitive to others because people can take it the wrong way, especially women that come a lot of times with insecurities. And when they
Yeah.
are in an environment that is, obviously fast forward, aggressive, you know, even a small remark like why you didn't meet the deadline or whatever can be interpreted as I'm useless, I cannot do that job or whatever. So
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And communication is one of those things as leaders, right? It's something we have to continue to practice and work on and improve. Communication in leadership isn't a one and done, like, oh, I'm a great communicator and it's over, right? Because every person in your organization receives communication from you in a different way, in a different tone, in a different understanding. People who might be more extroverted or have stronger personalities, like in your face personalities, you may say something sarcastic and it does just bounces right off of them, or they will dig right back in. And somebody who's more introverted and more quiet may just internalize that and walk away and just be beat down. And you have to know your team members and know how to communicate to each and every one of them. So I love that. On mentorship, um, I love this idea and I hadn't thought about it. Whenever somebody comes into, for instance, our company, we usually pair them with someone, right? Like that's a natural thing to say, hey, if you need
Yeah.
anything, this person is your go to. And that's a good kind of onboarding practice. But this idea of career mentorship, maybe beyond your manager, because I think that's what we think of as the manager's role, right? Your manager's role is to mentor you professionally, and hopefully personally, and help you achieve your goals that you're wanting for. But sometimes your manager doesn't look like you, and your manager doesn't have faced the same challenges that you've faced. And so I wanted to ask you about that transition for you, as you started as an individual contributor in what is otherwise a white male dominated industry of technology, uh, even more so engineering than just overall technology. What were the challenges of making that transition as a woman, transitioning from an individual contributor to a leader, and leading a team? What were the challenges and what were the more fulfilling parts of that transition?
Yeah. So first of all, the challenge was even get myself out there. And I don't know if it's just me or women in general. We tend to be less outspoken about what we want. So even though I wanted to become a manager, I didn't necessarily say that. And what happened was, as I was pregnant with my second child, I have four. So with my second, there was an opening of a manager position at my company. As my husband was actually the one that pushed me forward to kind of come and say, hey, I want this position. I can do it. So even just that, just saying I'm capable and that's what I want, even that can be challenging, can be very challenging.
Yeah,
Now, when you know what you want, now how do you get there? So, for example, when I was working at DigitalOcean and I wanted to grow to a director role, I knew what I wanted. I communicated that to my manager, but now, okay, how do I get there? And it wasn't specifically clear to my manager and to me exactly what are the steps or what is like the check marks that I need to hit in order to be advanced to the next level. So I had to work really hard and push all the time, like, okay, give me feedback, but not just say you are great. Just give me feedback about, okay, what am I lacking? And beyond that, there were a little bit biases against me, to be honest. Again, I'm never saying like, oh, I was mistreated or whatever, because I don't feel like that. But there are biases, and
sure.
we need to take that into account, that there are biases around us, and we just don't need to don't let that discourage you. Even though if there is a bias, just know who you are, what you're worth, and fight your way there. So that was another challenge that they faced, bias against me from people who didn't know me that well, to be honest, but for some reason thought I wasn't a fit. And I had to fight that and challenge them.
Well, and I think that's an important conversation, right? Like there are biases, and so many times they are subconscious. They are just programmed in us, and we're not even aware of them until somebody kind of shines a light, or we are super introspective and trying to seek those things out. And there are biases. We know this in culture. We see this all the time. A strong woman is considered to be pushy. Is considered to be overbearing. Is considered to be, like there is definitely a bias about when a woman acts the same way we expect a man to act, in those binary terms, right? There is this bias, that we assume, we look at them and we read them differently for some reason. And I'd like to stay on this topic a little bit longer. What are some other biases you've experienced that are like that maybe leaders listening can be aware of and try to educate themselves on how they may be seeing their team, with these kind of clouded glasses or biased glasses?
Yeah, so definitely the point that you made was a very important one. Like assertive, an assertive woman is seem as an aggressive one, and how do you kind of say, well, I'm not an aggressive one. I just know what I
Right.
want, know what. Um, Trying to think what other biases were, but definitely one of the things I heard, by the way, in hindsight, that some people thought I wasn't charismatic. Now, what is charismatic? Like, especially if you are coming to work as an engineering leader, you're not like a TED speaker or whatever. So some people thought, well, it's not charismatic enough because you don't have this personality that is very outspoken, outgoing. I'm more on an introverted side than extroverted. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean that I cannot be a good leader. So that's definitely another bias that I had, being an introverted is someone that maybe another thing that I heard a lot is that I don't speak enough in meetings because for me it's difficult to kind of you know, sometimes it's difficult for me to say what I think, especially when there is a large group of people, and especially when there are a lot of men on the table and they are very vocal.
Yeah.
The fact that I don't speak doesn't mean that I don't have what to say and that I don't have an opinion.
And I
And
think that's important for leaders as you're listening to this is to recognize that, when you have a meeting of a bunch of outspoken people, it's your job as the leader to hear the voices that aren't speaking up. It's your job to pull that out. And sometimes you can't do that in the meeting. Some you can. Some you could say, Lamar, I know you have an opinion on this. Tell me what your thoughts are. And they maybe feel free to speak up, but sometimes it's on your one-on-one. Say, hey, I know there's a lot of talk about this and you may not have had an opportunity to voice your opinions. I want to hear what you have to say about this subject matter. It's our job as leaders to figure out what are the ways to give everyone an opportunity for their voice to be heard. And so I think that's extremely important.
absolutely. And I was always very sensitive to that as a leader. I was always trying to find what people had in mind, what they thought. And as you said, not always during the meeting, because some people don't like to be kind of pointed during the meeting, but definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes back to knowing your people, right? Some of them, they're not speaking up because they don't feel like they can get a word in edgewise because there's so many people just talking over each other. So for them, you can stop everybody from talking and say, "You have the floor. I'd like to hear what you had to say. You've been awfully quiet. I know you have opinions." And then other people, you may do that very thing. You're like, they do not want to be called out in this
Yeah,
meeting. I get it. I'm going to wait till after the meeting. I'm going to pull them aside. I'm going to get their feedback. Because as a leader, our job is to get as much feedback from as many sources as possible so we can make the most educated and hopefully, best decisions possible. But speaking about communication, I know you probably have a lot of experience with this. I want to talk a little bit about remote team communication. Because it's easy when you're all around a table. You can see each other face to face, and you pick up on some signals. As a communicator, that's one of my strengths is being able to kind of read a room, see a face, understand what's happening. On Zoom, not so easy. In remote situation through written text, not as easy. What are some challenges that you see in good remote team communication? Because for us, just a little bit of our backstory. I've told this story a number of times. We were an on-site co-located team when we started the company. We had an office. Everyone came to it. We enjoyed it. And in 2019, before the pandemic, we kind of made the decision to go fully remote. And so we gave everyone an opportunity to go home, get what they needed to set up offices in other locations, in their home offices or co-working or whatever was best for them. And we shut down the office. One of the things we struggled with the most initially was communication because we had lost that walking past the office door and that constant seeing everyone face to face. What do you think are some other challenges you see in good remote team communication?
yeah, absolutely. So I work remote since the beginning of 2016, way before it was kind of today is kind of a norm, I would
Yeah.
say. I think that you kind of described your situation where people knew each other. I think one of the first challenges you have is how do you actually get people connected when they actually never met each other before and they are just starting out, or as you onboard new team members? Because We all know that we are people eventually, and we work with people. It's not just about work, it's about getting to know each other. And when you're in the same office space, you go for coffee breaks, for lunch, and get to know each other. And when you're remote, it's more difficult. So I think it's important to find a time to actually talk with people about themselves, about what do they like doing, just things that are not work related. Whether it's when you start a one-on-one conversation, just asking people how they are doing, what's going on in their lives, as much as they are willing to share, of course, and share yourself. And use some tools. There are some actually fun tools you can use just for kind of casual conversations. For example, one of them is called Gather Round. It's like I would say it's like speed dating, not actually speed dating, but it's kind of a fun activity to do with a team to get to know people. You can form different topics of short 7-minute conversations. You can do it on with pairs or small groups. It's like breakout rooms in Zoom, but it's more organized. They have different topics. It can be on food, on travel, and whatever you want, basically, or it can be work related. And it allows people the opportunity, maybe a little bit artificially because it pairs people out randomly, to get to know each other. I think this is one of the most important things for me, just to people will feel comfortable with each other. And you mentioned communication, right? How do you make sure that people communicate although they are not just sitting next to each other? So I think it's important to kind of form some ground rules, right? How do people communicate? Which tools you use? And make sure that you touch base with people more often than maybe you used to formally doing otherwise. If it's like having a weekly one on one, if it's like daily stand ups, checking out in tools like Slack or whatever, having more written communication is also important, right? Just to make sure that you're not missing out on each other. Describing, okay, those are the things I think we should do, writing things up, and having other people review it. So, you need to invest more time in making sure that everyone is on the same page and nothing is being missed.
And that is really is the challenge. I know as we've gone from on-site to remote, one of the things was communication, and there became a lack of clarity because when we were in office, we didn't write a lot of things down because we were all in the office. If I needed to know something, I could just yell next door, and that person would have it. And now that we have people all over the world, and it's not you can't just do that. And when you're online, you can't just ask somebody for something. They may not be working when you're working. Like we work a flexible schedule, which means for our team, everyone works when they want to work and when it's best for them to work. And that may mean 2 hours here, 2 hours there, an hour over here. There's no expectation that anyone is online at the same time. And so you can't just ask. So we had to start building out more better systems and processes and handbooks and stuff like that. So we document as much as we can so that people know where they can go to get that information. But the next thing, once we got clarity in order, connection. Right, connection was that thing you start to feel, especially as you said, especially when we've hired people who've never seen each other face to face. We're actually having our first in-person summit where we're bringing the whole company together in May. Actually, as this episode goes live in a week or two, we will be having our summit, and I'm super excited about it because there's so many faces that I've only seen through Zoom, and that's the only experience I've had. And connection is one of those things that are tough. One of the things that we've done to kind of piggyback on what you said is the gather round idea is we have a water cooler space in our company communication tool, and we encourage everyone to post messages that run. So we have our foodies have a thread that they're talking about all the food that they love. Our gardeners and all those people, all of our growers and stuff, talk about gardening and tips and tricks. And we have some woodworkers that like to talk about that stuff. So we give them hopefully space where they can connect on common subjects that they like. The other thing that we've tried to do from a professional standpoint, talking about communication and ground rules, is we've created our how to work with us guides. So we have a handbook where each person creates a section in the handbook, and it just answers some questions like, hey, how do you work with me? How do I communicate? What are my pet peeves? What are my what you can expect from me? What do I expect from my managers? What do I expect from my direct reports? Like, these are the ways that you working with me works, so that everybody can kind of connect quickly and kind of get an understanding about who each of us are. But even with all of those measures, connection is tough in a remote work culture, and we're still struggling with it. If I'm being completely honest, we're still struggling with how do we create as much connection through a digital format as possible, and actually realize, like, I'm not one of those people anymore. Anyway, I was in the early days of like, oh, our business is a family, but our business is made up of families and people, and I want to get to know them, and I want to make sure that our business is doing what's necessary to take care of them in our role. But connection is tough. I guess I say all that just to say connection is tough in a remote work culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because people are complicated, you know, every person is different, especially when you have people from different countries, from different backgrounds, from different cultures. You have to put the extra effort, and I still think there's nothing like personal communication. And it's great that you're doing this actual face-to-face meetup in May, which
Yeah.
is wonderful. But not always it's possible, right? Sometimes it's
It
impossible to do it.
Well, as the pandemic has shown, right? Like in
Yeah.
2019, we shut our doors, and we planned in 2020 to have a meetup. And of course, the pandemic hit and we couldn't do it. And so everyone stayed home. And then 2021 hit, and we were like, all these other ways, weren't sure. I think we've just finally come to terms with the fact that this pandemic is probably going to be with us for a while, and we just have to figure out how to do it as safely as possible, and give people the flexibility if they don't feel safe, that they don't have to come. And if they can't come, can we find a way to connect them into what we're doing anyway? And so those are the things that we're currently working on now. So it's definitely challenging. You're right. Go meeting face to face isn't always possible, but there are means. Like you said, you gather around is a tool that you can use. There are lots of tools like that. If you're using Slack, I suppose there are some kind of tools you can click in that will just create coffee time, like a little bit of a kind of a coffee spot with one-on-ones, and pair you up so you can get to know other people and connect with other people in other ways. But I think that is the stuff, right? When you're remote, you find yourself, you just kind of out of sight, out of mind, I guess, is I guess the way it works. And so unless you're intentional about it, those things fall through the cracks.
Definitely, intentional is a key, and also figuring out how people like to communicate. For example, we started using a tool called Loom lately. It's like
Yep.
for creating short videos. So find a way that people feel comfortable communicating. Some people prefer text, some people prefer just face to like a Zoom meeting, and some people prefer like to record a short video. So
Yeah.
let people just express themselves the way that feels comfortable to them.
And that, just for leaders too, like, you have things that you want to convey to your teams, and you're looking for alternative ways of doing it than just getting everyone on a call, which I hate doing, especially when I'm just broadcasting information. I hate interrupting everybody and say, hey, everybody, adjust your schedules around my schedule so that I can talk at you. Like, that feels really annoying to me. So what we started doing is we do a weekly podcast that the owners get together, and it's a video podcast, and people can watch it when they want to watch it. And there's no, or they don't watch it at all. We put the show notes in there, and they can find what they want to find. But we do things like that. I used to do a little 5-minute videos. Just when I had something that I wanted to broadcast, I just record a video, do it real quick. I do it for social media anyway, post it on our platform. People watch it when they want to, when they have the free time, and it's not interrupting them and stealing away their time. So those are some other ways from leaders to kind of connect. Sometimes just sharing your message through a video where they can see your face, hopefully hear your heart, and not just, uh, you know, some broadcast text message. I believe in written communication. I think we should be doing more of it. We definitely always err on the side of asynchronous communication over synchronous communication. If it can be done asynchronously, do it that way. It's less of a disruption to everyone else, and people can be more thoughtful. They could read what you have to say or listen to what you have to say, and then decide how they want to respond, and be a part of that conversation. So I think those are really good tools. shifting a little bit on, I don't want to say the negative side, but in remote work, one of the things that we didn't do well as a team, even not even remote work, even on office, and with your management experience, we didn't effectively deal with performance issues properly. We were so worried about not being seen as nice and gracious and thoughtful through all the processes that sometimes we just didn't deal with issues quickly enough or firmly enough. What are some tips you might offer to managers listening to help them deal with difficult conversations on performance, but in a way that is kind, but not necessarily nice?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, that's really a great question. And I think everyone struggle with it, especially as they start leading, because this is like the uncomfortable part of being a manager, right? You have to deal with some performance issues and sometimes let people go, which is definitely, I don't think anyone likes it.
No.
I think one of the things I would say that the manager job, and usually I tell it to people, a manager job is not, and it's not just for related to performance reviews. It's not to be the most likable and most popular person. That's first of all. We have to acknowledge that sometimes we do things that people will not necessarily like us for, and it can be anything. By the way, it can be making a decision that people don't like. That's one thing. The second thing about performance, I believe in being transparent and giving timely feedback. So don't wait for performance review. If someone is not meeting your expectations, communicate that to them as things happen and explain. Always share. I think the way you can be thoughtful about it is to be transparent, open, to share that in a way that will be the right way to communicate to that person. With some people, by the way, saying things directly works the best. Some people need the messaging to be softened up a little bit. Depends on the personality you want to be kind of, to identify which kind of person you work with and not to be too direct if a person is really hard for them. But be transparent. Share with them what are you seeing. Put the emotions aside. It's always good to stick with facts and always match expectations. Always say, well, those are my expectations. This is how you perform. Those are the gaps. And try to give them the opportunity to respond and hear them out. Really listen to them. A lot of times it's hard for us to listen. We just hear ourselves.
Solid advice. Extremely solid advice. I started out as a designer, and as a designer, I'm fairly particular about the stuff that we put out and the stuff we design. So when I've worked with new people and they've come in to work with me as design, I've always kind of told them, I would rather you bring me rubbish in a day than rubbish in a week. Meaning, I'd rather you bring me work more rapidly and iteratively so we can adjust and learn each other's style and I can give you direction than you wait a week and then you've kind of decided that you love this, you've worked really hard on it, and you now are married to this kind of concept, and then you bring it to me, and I have to go, you were way off the beaten, like you're way off path. This is not what I envisioned at all. And if you come to me early, it's a lot less painful for both of us, and we will find that synergy together by having frequent updates to that process. And what you just said is so true. When you have an issue with performance, an unmet expectation, that you bring up within a day or two versus an unmet expectation that you waited a month or two to bring up is a lot harder. It's a lot harder if you wait a month to talk about this unmet expectation. It's a lot harder than if you just deal with it right away, because now it's iterative. It's a little bit, it's not, you've been sitting on this thing. Because what happens is too, if you sit on these things for too long as a leader, as a manager, you get more frustrated, you get more angry, so now you're not ready to communicate in a level head because you've been holding on to this thing that you're so upset about, and this person is blindsided. They have no idea that they're not meeting your expectations. They think everything is hunky-dory. So you kind of have to do things quickly. I think it's such wise advice, and the idea of just listening listening to their perspective and their point of view so you can find out, because a lot of times unmet expectations are simply because you as a leader didn't communicate the expectation in the first place, and they were flying blind. Like, they're trying to do the best that they can and you didn't communicate. And if you can listen, you may be able to find out where some areas you can improve as a manager and leader as well. Limor, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Leading to Fulfillment. I want to give you the last word. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about your coaching and your teaching and the resources that you have available, where can they do that?
So, thank you so much, James, for having me today. If people want to connect me, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Just go to LinkedIn and to Limor Bergman, and you'll find me there. Feel free to reach out. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here today.
It was great learning from the wisdom and experience of someone like Limor, and I want to thank her for being on the show. Everything we mentioned, including the full transcript of the show, is available over on our website, and you can access it anytime by visiting leadingtofulfillment.com/014. That's leadingtofulfillment.com/014. Also, on that website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. We talk about it every episode because that's where we will let you know when new episodes drop. We'll also send you original and curated content on leadership, managing teams, and finding fulfillment. It's a very valuable resource, and I hope you'll check it out. Now, for just a moment, I'd like to address the topic of diversity. Limor and I discussed women in leadership and the biases that oftentimes hold them back from positions that they are more than qualified for. It has become clear in recent years that diversity is a must, but it's not enough to be merely open to diversity. Companies that want the best talent pool must attract diverse candidates and overcome their own biases. Creating a company culture that demonstrates respect and inclusion is the most impactful way to attract talent from all backgrounds and walks of life. Employees talk, so companies that make every voice heard and treat people as equals will stand out from the crowd. It's also beneficial to recognize that we all have biases and blind spots, as much as we'd like to think otherwise, right? Affinity bias, or that subconscious tendency to favor people similar to us, can take a massive toll on the hiring practices. To combat it, implement strategies that reduce bias, such as blind recruiting. It's also important to use a diverse hiring team to assess potential candidates. Diversity is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself as a business leader. With more ideas, talents, and backgrounds in the mix, innovation explodes. Perhaps as you reevaluate your company culture and hiring practices, ultimately expanding your talent pool, your company will experience its own renaissance of ideas and innovation. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode. But until then, may your businesses be successful as you lead your teams to fulfillment.